Welcome to the Team Teach podcast. I'm Clare, and in each episode you'll find me talking with an expert guest to learn more about behaviour. We squeeze a lot into each episode. You'll listen to the latest thinking in behaviour, continue your professional development with our book recommendation, and then I'll send you away with 3 practical tips you can use in your setting. I'm joined today by Helly Douglas, and we're talking about the importance of continuing professional development in behaviour support. Hi, Helly.
Hi, Claire. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Not a problem. We like to start off with a question about your experience and who you are. Can you tell the listener?
Absolutely, I can. So I work for Team Teach as head of content. That means I'm in charge of the articles, the videos, downloads, training resources, and the podcast as well. And before I worked for Team Teach, I spent 16 years working in education. I started off in primary and then worked in secondary. I've taken a huge range of roles over the years, a particular interest in supporting children with additional needs.
Okay, nice. And we're really lucky to have you on the podcast today talking about this topic. It's a really important one, and I know we'll have lots to talk through, but I guess as you know, and you'll be familiar with the podcast, we do start with a reflective question. What you wish you knew then that you know now about this topic?
Well, I think quite early on in my career, I definitely thought that there is a point I would get to where I was good at behaviour support. And that was it. There was a pinnacle moment that I would achieve. And I think I realise now that behaviour support and behaviour support training and learning is never done. And we can't really consider ourselves good at behaviour and then just stop. There's always more to learn. So I think now I've learned so much around trauma, attachment, neurodiversity and disabilities, all things that I wouldn't have known very much about at the beginning of my career. So I think that's the thing that I would tell my new self is, maybe think a bit more broadly about continuing to learn throughout your career, never at a fixed point.
I couldn't agree more, because I was thinking about the question and I guess, in relation to myself. And it's so similar for me that my arrogant early self did think it was done. And I would have been the worst person. I don't want anyone to contact me and say and agree that I was the worst person during CPD events, because I thought I knew it all. And then I don't know, all the humbling experiences, I think, of working in, people referral units, alternative provisions, and just being humbled of like, oh, I really actually do not know everything. There is so much to learn. And I don't know if you say the same, but for me in the work that I do now, every day is a learning day. And it sounds a bit nerdy and a bit silly, but every day is a learning day. Like I run the Team Teach training, but I'm still learning. I don't know everything. And I think that's important that our staff kind of have that mindset.
Absolutely. I think maybe when we think about being good at behaviour, we often think about being really good at behaviour management, all these tips and tricks and great little habits. And those all have their place, absolutely, in behaviour support, but it's not the entirety of what we're trying to do. So it's learning far more broadly about what we mean by behaviour support. And I think from my experience in the classroom, there are many times where I thought, oh yeah, I'm pretty good at this. And then I got that class, that new class with that new group of children that made me question everything about my practice. And I think that can be very demoralizing sometimes, particularly when you become an experienced teacher and you start questioning yourself. But actually, if we can keep this open mindset and being curious about behaviour, I think that helps us get through those trickier patches where we are suddenly faced with some new challenges, and we can see that there are things we can do to learn and support in different ways, and we can find what works for the individual child. It's not just this broad brushstroke of this will work for everybody.
Yeah, I think that there is often a misconception that we do this, or like some fad comes about and everyone jumps on the bandwagon of being like, yeah, this is the thing. I'll never forget, was it Learning Styles? I don't know if you were teaching then.
Indeed,
was it Honey and
yes.
Mumford? Well, that sounds like a band. Is it Honey and Mumford?
I'm not sure it was, but I do remember Learning Styles, and suddenly overnight we had to make displays, we had to change our planning to fit this new approach. And I think actually as we're going along, teachers and staff in health and social care as well, we're getting much better at saying, hang on a minute, where's our evidence base? What backs this up? Why are we doing this? I think we're being more curious and a bit more critical, which is a good thing, in my opinion.
I think it can only be a good thing where, yeah, we are the people that are driving to have quality continuing professional development. When we say that everyone can benefit from Team Teach training, we really do mean everyone. Our in-house training puts the emphasis on the unique needs of your setting and creates a consistent approach to behaviour across your entire organisation. Head over to the Team Teach website to find out more. And I suppose that, when I was thinking about the episode, I really was thinking about this big question, and I know it's hard to answer, but what makes good continuing professional development around this topic? How do we, in our services, make it work for us?
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about what makes good continuing professional development, and we've thought a lot at Team Teach about what do we want to do to support people with this journey. And we felt that it's very easy for us to go from a training event and then a year or 2 years later to another training event. And sort of our CPD then is being removed from our day-to-day practice because we're not embedding and refining what we're doing on an ongoing sort of daily basis. So we're really excited that we've launched our Knowledge Hub at Team Teach, which now has, I'm very proud, we've got 100 hours of supportive content.
All right, yeah, nice.
We have been working very hard over the past few years to build that up. But why we wanted to do that is we wanted to take all those messages and thinking that happened in training and then keep learning about it, overlearning, trying things in new ways, applying it to your own service and setting. And then when you return to your training event, you're learning more, but you haven't sort of had that big drop in the learning since you last came. So it's been really important for us. And we're finding very positive feedback from people enjoying just a little drop at a time of CPD. It doesn't always have to be a week's training course or picking up a whole new program. It can just be those little bits, setting yourself a time each week or dedicating a staff meeting, particularly thinking around behaviour support. Are we thinking about how our whole staff are having time to focus on behaviour and learn more, not just think about situations we're facing, but maybe being a bit proactive and learning more about all the different things we can do to support behaviour?
Yeah, I think it's a problem in services. It's hard to not generalize when we're talking about this. So I'm talking generally across lots of sectors about CPD, and I'm talking from my experience without, I guess, an evidence base specifically, but my experience across lots of different sectors that I've worked in, that it is the one hit wonder. It's like, okay, it's September if you work in schools, or if you're new to health and social care, it's your induction. So you have, online modules, you have your health and safety, you have your first aid, and then it's one hit wonder and then it's done, and that's it. Okay, cool, finish. You have your behavior support. And I really think that there is a culture, and I don't really know where it's come from across sectors, where the name is continuing professional development. And actually what we get is one hit wonder training programs. And I just wondered kind of what your thoughts around that are, and kind of how that's come about, how we can change cultures around it. I know the Knowledge Hub is one way where we have those things out there, but how do we get people on board with it and change cultures and minds around it?
Yeah, I think a lot of our problem comes down to the fact that everyone is incredibly busy, working really hard with so much to do. And so it's very easy then for our professional development to become a tick box, something that I must do because maybe, it's like my safeguarding training. I have to do it every year. That's compulsory, tick, done. With other training, then it almost sometimes seems a luxury to be able to learn more about the area we're working in. So I think trying to drill into that mindset a bit and say, well, actually, I deserve to have time to learn to be the best I can, and I'm going to give the best support if I can do that. And it's really hard to carve out that time, but I do think it's maybe about seeing the value in ourselves and in our organizations, that if we can invest in this, and it doesn't need to be financially investing, it's a time investment, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I know that's tricky, but we keep hearing from organizations who are doing fantastic things to make sure that this professional development time is important and valued, and not just dropped because something else has come up, because there's always going to be something that comes up. So it's really interesting to see how I think every sector and service and setting have to find their own way to do this, because like you say, we can't say this will work. Do a 1 hour staff meeting a week. I think 90% of people listening will then say, well, that won't work for me. We've got to be really curious, and we've got to try different things until we hit upon what works well for us. And I do think letting staff be driven by their interests and the needs of what they're seeing in front of them as well, rather than us all having to stay together learning the same thing at the same time. There's a place for that, but I don't think that's the only way that we can learn.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think back to most of the training that I've had across different sectors, and it's been whole service where we're all learning the same thing. And I have worked in one service where we could go off and research and find courses really kind of bespoke to us. And I remember thriving in that, with that freedom of kind of playing to my strengths and actually genuinely be driven and interested. Because I suppose if we think particularly maybe about schools and the learning environment, we're always trying to, in the special needs service that I work in, trying to spark interest and intrigue and curiosity in the young people that we work with there. And then we put on CPD, that doesn't necessarily spark the interest in staff. We all have that mandatory training that we just have to do, that that is a definite. But there is something about allowing staff to be curious. And when we're really thinking about behaviour support, there's so much we can do with CPD. And like you say, financially, it doesn't have to be at a cost, because we, working with those individuals in our service, are the experts in the people that we're working with. And some of the CPD and work we might do would be reflective practice or different kinds of conversations around individuals. So I think there's lots that we can do without it being just all in a hall or all in a service learning the same thing that doesn't necessarily relate to everyone.
Maybe that's the wonderful thing about the technology we have on offer. It's never been so easy to access information. I know we have to be careful about the quality of the information we're accessing, but we can explore in so many interesting ways. And I do think there's really is a time where it's wonderful for a staff team to come together and to talk and share and learn together. For example, we have a talking behaviour show for all of our Knowledge Hub members, anyone who does Team Teach training. And every other month they can watch an episode which has an interview with a leading figure, and there's a resource pack. And we know that people are using those in staff meetings together and finding them very valuable. But I do think there's also that time, like you said, we can be led by our interests and our own point of need and our own professional development points. So we can stay curious and have fun and enjoy learning. I think it's quite an exciting time for CPD at the moment.
I think it absolutely is. And what you're saying there really is having a balance of our training. And I guess through technology, through things like the Knowledge Hub and getting quality information and training through an online platform is really varied. We could do it together. We can work separately and learn different things in bite-sized chunks without it being a huge time drain, which, as we know, and you've already mentioned, Helly, that time is a factor for so many people around CPD.
And I think we can also learn from each other. I do think, looking back, how easy it is to fall into a trap of assuming that new members of staff know less than experienced members of staff, and therefore the experienced members of staff, it's their job to give over information, and it becomes a bit of a one-way street. Whereas actually, I think newer members of staff coming with very different experiences and often the latest training have so much to offer in return. And if we can work together collaboratively and truly value what other people are helping us to learn, I think that's a really important way to be, rather than assuming because we've been doing our job for X number of years that we are the ones who know everything. I feel that's from my own experience, 16 years teaching. It would be really easy to have thought, well, I know everything about teaching, so how could an early career teacher teach me anything? Well, actually, in university, they'd had the latest thinking around topics like neurodiversity. They'd had access to training events that I hadn't. So, of course, I could learn in return. So trying to work together and learn from each other, I just think is really important for our professional development.
Well, having that fresh set of eyes as well no matter where people are in their careers in whatever sector, everyone has something to offer to the table. And I guess I go back to that idea, particularly with behavior support, that our staff are the experts in the individuals that we're caring for, or if we're working in a school, that we're working with those kids. And our staff are the experts in those kids. And whether we're new to it, we just have a fresh set of eyes where we might spot things to do with behavior that can help everyone out. But if we don't come together and have that training, like all of that is missed, and we have maybe the same set of a few eyes on the situation, maybe going through the same cycle of behavior and the cycle of influence without having different perspectives come in.
Absolutely. I think then as well, how easy it is to assume that some members of staff are the ones that need to be in these conversations and not everybody. Like you say, are we including broader support staff, reception staff, administrative people into these conversations as well? And are we investing in their professional development as well? Are they being thought of when we're thinking about how to upskill a whole staff team? It's not just a few people. This is everybody who's working to support somebody. I do wonder as well, how often we just learn at crisis points. So something goes wrong and we think we need to learn something from this. And everyone sort of is very reactive. And yes, that learning should happen when something goes wrong, absolutely. But I think the better opportunity is to learn when things are going good, because that's when we're making professional development a habit. And that's when we have the chance to be curious and explore without there being the pressure of responding to something urgent or rapid changes having to be made. That gives us a chance to think and digest and learn and try things out. So I think we should definitely be learning more when things are good, not just at crisis points.
Yeah, I didn't really consider that. That definitely sometimes when I'm asked to go in and run team teach courses, it's a response to crisis, like something bad has happened, and the service respond by, okay, let's get Clare in, or whoever the trainer is, to come in and save the day and give the magic bullet and the zeitgeist, and everything will be okay after that. And sure, coming in at crisis point does make a huge difference in supporting staff, helping them to stay safe in their services, helping to support behavior maybe in a different way and different approaches. And it definitely, I know from practice, it makes a big difference. But there is such a wealth in what you're saying there about rewinding a bit and actually having some of that training when things are going well with certain individuals, and picking out those bits and working around that. And I know actually in my service, we do Thursday's Child, which is to do with not just children that might be struggling with their behavior or dysregulation, but just naming a child and having a meeting around the child. And that in itself is great CPD. And actually, during that training, they sometimes use bits of the Knowledge Hub as well to support some of the things that might be going on for that child. But it's just like a flash meeting, half an hour max, but really focusing in on one individual. And I think moments like that, where it might be that things are going really right for that child and they're kind of dissecting kind of what's going on and how can we keep this going because this is really great. But focusing on crisis, it's so reactive, and we talk about it, don't we, on team teach courses all the time, trying to make sure that we're responding, not reacting. But that's the same message that we're getting across here around continuing professional development.
Yeah, absolutely. This isn't what am I doing wrong? What don't I know? What am I failing at? Isn't it easy for us to think about all of those things rather than what am I doing really well? How am I supporting in a great way? And where could I, fine tune what I'm doing or learn something new? I think shifting that mindset is so easy for us to be so negatively focused on our own practice and pick up our insecurities about the things we're not so good at and compare ourselves to other colleagues who seem to be good at things that we're not good at. But actually, valuing when we're great, when days are going well, what worked well, and evaluating that, and then using our CPD to further develop our skills. If we can shift our mindset a bit around CPD, I think that would really help a lot of people.
I think it would. And I've got a question in mind, and I think that you might give me daggers for this one. But I'm wondering what, you listen to and put on all the content on the Knowledge Hub. And I'm wondering like what your top picks are and kind of what's really jumped out for for you, kind of putting all the content on? I'm just checking for daggers.
Well, there are no daggers, Claire, but it's a really difficult thing that you've asked there because there is so much content available and I'm so proud of it. You know, it's like asking who's your favourite child. That's a difficult one. But I think what I've particularly loved is that the content team have developed support guides that have really unpicked sort of interesting areas that people might want to learn more about. And I particularly like our one-to-one activities as well, which is something quite new for us, thinking about how we can support individuals. So we've created a bank of resources and it's ever growing, particularly thinking about people who might be working one-to-one and want some support around how to have conversations. So at the moment, we're developing some new resources around bullying and to support victims of bullying, also perpetrators of bullying, so we can have these open conversations and recognise that behaviour is communication and think about how we can support it best. So I'm really proud of these resources that are practical, because I do love reading things, but I really like things that you can use in your service or setting.
I see that you clearly do have a favourite child from that answer, and that is absolutely okay. And yeah, I agree. I mean, I haven't specifically seen all of the resources on the website, but I know that practitioners listening, love practical things. And that is why it's a really good segue into us thinking about the 3 top tips for the episode.
This was really hard because I could have given you 20 tips happily, but I've tried to stick to my 3. So the first one I would say is that there is always more to learn. We need to think this. There's always more to learn. We're in an evolving industry. Everything's changing. The language we're using is changing, and it's very easy for us to work in a bubble. So if we can just keep that mindset, there's always more to learn, and enjoy that. My second point would be that I think working in high pressure environments can really erode our confidence. So I think CPD is a really important way to build our confidence and our skill set and our responses to the individuals we're supporting. So thinking about, yes, we're in a high pressure environment, let's use our CPD to help us stay confident. And my final point is, we are really busy. I know what it's like in the classroom. You know what it's like. And I know how hard health and social care staff work. We can't just keep using massive training events as our only way of CPD. So I think micro-learning, dipping in, just a small moment, trying to carve out little small pieces of time that you're going to dedicate to your own professional development, is really important. Those are my 3 things.
Absolutely. And we've already mentioned about the Knowledge Hub and the resources available there. And yeah, Helly's picked out a few practical things across this episode that I think will really help people thinking about the culture of CPD and kind of how it's used across services. I appreciate your time so much, Helly, and I'll catch up with you soon.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Claire. It's been a pleasure.
You've been listening to the Team Teach podcast. It's been great to have you here with us as we discuss behaviour, communication, and the ways we can best support those in our care. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.